Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and attending this talk. I'm so grateful to be here, and thank you to the PyOhio team for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Before we get to the main presentation, let me quickly introduce myself. Hi, I'm Ria, and I'm currently working as a software engineer in the fintech industry. Over the course of my career, I've worked with multiple database systems and evaluated different technologies. I particularly enjoy sharing my learnings and knowledge with the community and breaking down complex concepts into easy, understandable bits. I'm also very passionate about organizing outreach initiatives for women in STEM and giving back to the community in whatever way possible. When I'm not involved in any coding adventures, I love to read fiction and play music instruments like the ukulele and the harmonica. So, about 3 years ago, when I started my journey in the professional world, I quickly realized the importance of communication. Throughout my career, I've seen that it is not just important on what you work on, but it is equally important to be able to share and communicate that with others. Be it the exciting new feature that you're building or the super cool product, if other people don't understand it, it's probably not good enough. And improving your communication skills will open many doors for you in your professional career. Which brings me to my next point, that documentation is communication. I feel that it is one of the most important aspects of software development, and we developers often view it as the unnecessary, boring post coding task that just needs to be completed. But trust me, documentation is more than just information. It's a way of communicating understanding. But the question is, why should I care? And to convince you, I have picked up some points that have personally benefited me, starting with knowledge sharing. So, whenever I have to start a new project or work on something that I have not worked on before, it's the well written docs that come to my rescue. They help me get started, make progress, or get unstuck. And when members of my team or new joiners come and thank me for the docs that I have written, it's honestly a great feeling. So, documentation creates a knowledge hub that not just guides you, but also others in their career journeys. And trust me, all it takes is just that one call in the middle of the night that makes you realize the importance of documentation when you have to solve that production issue. So, well written documentation is crucial for essentially resolving the annoying bugs and issues. And also, I know many of us feel that holding the code hostage where only we understand what it can do and how it behaves is a power move. But trust me, it'll backfire sooner or later. In fact, you should do just the opposite. You should set it up in a way so that others, not just developers, but even non technical people can understand it. With this transfer of ownership, delegation, you are able to take up new exciting projects and others are able to help themselves. And most of the times, the docs that I have written have been so helpful for me. When we are resolving that painstaking, annoying task, we assure ourselves that this is something that I'll never forget, how I conquered this. But trust me, we always do. And at that time, documentation comes to our rescue. It's a lifeline for your own memory. It not just guides others, but also you. It's for future you. So document all the pain areas that you felt while getting unstuck from that issue or the number of steps you had to navigate through to reach that solution. Documenting that will be a savior for you, trust me. And finally, showcasing your work. It just enhances your work visibility at your workplace. It tells others what you have worked on, but also instills their faith in your ability to be able to explain the concepts in an understandable manner. With this, I hope I was able to convince you how important documentation is. And now I want to share the top 10 tips that I have learned by writing multiple docs or from others, and hope they are helpful for you. Let's get started. Starting with the first, conciseness matters. Users appreciate clear to the point information. When you open a document, you don't want to get overwhelmed with the information that you have to deal with. You should aim to write the shortest, most practical self contained document. I know, easier said than done, but that balance is very important. Too long, nobody reads it. Too short, it doesn't cover the important aspects that the user needs to know. In some cases, length doesn't matter. I mean, you can write lengthy documents like tutorials or when you're documenting a feature, but in other cases, try to avoid unnecessary details. Try to supplement it with links which the user can go and follow and read what they want to know from there. Maybe you could have a prerequisite section at the top of your documentation that would help the users get started and then proceed with the document that you have written. Prioritize readability. Your document becomes 1,000 times better when it's more readable. Nobody wants to read a blob of text. Your documentation is not a novel. So it is very important to prioritize readability. And I've read this somewhere that users often scan that read. Whenever we go to the Stack Overflow website, we don't even read the question sometimes and directly search for the answer that will help us get unstuck. A beautiful way of prioritizing readability is through lists. Firstly, they are simple. You can organize your ideas clearly. Your readers won't get overwhelmed and they will, in fact, appreciate you for the clarity and the ease of understanding. Other things that you can do to focus on readability is have a table of contents in your documentation. So, as I just said, that users don't read, they skim through the document. Table of content will help them understand if the documentation is useful for them or if they'll find what they are looking for. Using headings and subheadings that relate to the content of the text. Having cool, funny subheadings is nice, but at the same time, they should highlight what the text is all about. Using spacing in your favor. Having properly spaced document doesn't make it overwhelming and it's more readable. Using bold font for keywords. You use bold to grab attention of the user, telling him or her that this is something that is very important. But don't overdo it. If everything is highlighted, then bold loses its purpose. Use visual aids wherever you can. So, I honestly love to add screenshots or diagrams, which wherever I can in my documentation, and I think that really enhances the readability and the overall user experience of the docs. Format your code samples. I think we all know that. Consistent indentation, proper syntax highlighting, a beautiful example there on your screen. Do this, don't do this. Properly indented, clear what it's trying to communicate in proper boxes. Just like that, the user can come and skim through the information they are looking for and use the code for their own purpose. If you have a command, add that to a separate box. Maybe that'll also make it neater and cleaner and easily scannable. And it'll just help the user find the information quickly, what they are looking for. The next point, I think most of us struggle with it, at least I do, understanding the audience. Sometimes it's not very clear who will read this documentation. Is it just for the internal team or non technical people would also be reading that? If it's just for your team, of course, go ahead and write it the way that you want to. But if you do not know who your audience would be, always assume it to be for beginners and write it in a beginner friendly manner. What that means is avoid technical jargon. Don't assume that your readers are familiar with industry specific terms. Define acronyms. For example, rather than saying it's an RPC mechanism, say that it's a remote procedure call mechanism, so that at least you are telling the user what that acronym means. And if possible, link it to another document so that they can go and read it themselves. It is very important to keep the flow simple so that the users are not overwhelmed with the information they are dealing with. Because simplicity always wins. Opt for simplicity over complexity. Straightforward, easy to follow language always for the win. An example on your screen, avoid using complicated language, complicated keywords. You are not giving a GRE exam. This documentation's purpose is to be able to make other people understand about what you know or what you have worked on. And it should be written in plain, simple language. many of us are not even native English speakers. So for us to understand that would be difficult if we use complicated language like that in the example above. Use plain language. One of the other points that I wanted to highlight is that when we are starting to write the document, oftentimes we are just overwhelmed or intimidated by looking at that blank page. That how should I exactly start? A tip that has worked for me is that I just convince myself that the first draft would be bad. And that just helps me get out of that perfection rut. So that helps me basically to define the outline, that what exactly will this document contain. Do I need to have a prerequisite section? Who is this document for? What is the aim of this documentation? And post that, once I start writing, I continuously keep refining it through multiple iterations, and trust me, it gets better. But the first draft, let it be bad. It's okay. Also, write in a way that you speak. So, write in a conversational and approachable tone. Imagine you're explaining the information to a colleague in just that manner. I mean, I use you a lot. You will go to this page, a drag down would appear, enter the configurations over there. Keep the tone conversational and approachable, because remember, this is also for the future you. The way you have understood that concept, later when you revise it, it'll be easier for you to remember what you had learned. So document with future self in mind, because trust me, that this document would come as a savior, as a lifeline for your own memory, as I discussed this earlier. So keep yourself in mind while also documenting, and use easy, straightforward conversational tone in the documents. Trust me, that will help you and the people who are reading it. Finally, seek feedback and test. Feedback can reveal areas that need improvement. So, oftentimes we just assume, oh, this point, everybody would know that. I don't need to elaborate or highlight this. But getting constant feedback from your juniors, seniors, or whoever is using that documentation can reveal those gap areas. And you need to constantly update that documentation in order to make it better. Testing and verifying the instructions that you have added to your document is also very important. While somebody's using your documentation, following a tutorial, and they are stuck somewhere, it's honestly a very frustrating experience. I'm sure you can relate too. So test and seek feedback, constantly refine it, and I'm sure your documentation will get better with each iteration. So, concluding with this, I learned to write by writing. Practice is what you need. The more you write, the more you get better. I still am learning new best practices, making some mistakes, improving those, and trust me, getting better and better as I write more. So I wish you happy documenting, and thank you so much for coming and attending this talk. I'm happy to connect. If you have any feedback for me, any questions, please feel free to reach out. Or if you just want to bond over tech, books, or music, happy to connect. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening ahead.